death, eternal punishment for anyone who opens this casket.
Come here.
Alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Hello, folks, and welcome to the Darkling podcast, episode number 10. We're back from a little bit of a long hiatus, but I'm your host, Vince, along with Mark. Mark, what's up, buddy?
Doing great, Vince. Yeah, double figures on the Darkling podcast. Darker Days episode 20, and we're on Darkling episode number 10. So, yeah, we're chugging away there. Good stuff, good stuff.
Yeah, and in just a few moments as we get into the show, we'll be having a wonderful and special guest with us from White Wolf's past. Mark, who do we have tonight?
We have none other than Mouseferatu, the rodent of the dark, Ari Marmell himself, freelancer with a long and distinguished career with White Wolf, AEG, Expeditious Retreat Press, Green Ronin, Necromancer Games, and now Wizards of the Coast. A prolific author of great renown. So we'll be getting him on the show in just a minute to talk to us about memories past and plans present and possibilities for the future.
Definitely. We have a whole bunch of questions for him, and we're going to just chat it up with him, and we want to just take a moment to say to everyone in the United States, happy 4th of July, because by the time this comes out, it'll be 4th of July, and we're going to be watching fireworks. Yeah.
Yeah. Happy Independence Day, America.
Happy Independence from you guys.
You're welcome to it.
Yeah.
Okay, folks, so as promised, joining us on the show is Ari Marmell, better or lesser or worse known as Mouseferatu, Rodent of the Dark. Ari, welcome to the Darkling podcast.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Well, thank you very much for coming on board. We really appreciate you taking the time to have a little chat with us now. Now, we in preparation for the show, had a look at at your website, and I was hoping there was going to be some really exciting story behind your internet handle, Mouseferatu.
Yes.
But according to your blog, the story is actually really rather dull.
Yeah, no, it's boring. It was I needed a handle for the White Wolf forums, and that's what my twisted mind came up with.
Well,
pretty much absolutely no inspiration, no motivation whatsoever. There's really really not a story there.
But nice and memorable nevertheless.
Yeah.
Now, most World of Darkness gamers, White Wolf fans, will know you from your work on Vampire the Masquerade with products such as Gilded Cage, Council of Primogen, Archons and Templars, Dark Ages Vampire with stuff like Spoils of War, The Player's Guides, Dark Ages Europe, also the Mummy's Player's Guide, and the Gehenna novel.
Yes.
But you've also had work published for Sword and Sorcery, including Scarred Lands and Ravenloft Lines, Necromancer Games, Doom of Listenshire, and the utterly fantastic Tome of Artifacts. You've had articles in Dragon Magazine, including a cool set of variant clerics that I use in my game to this day. Green Ronin, the Harmonaptera, and Freeport Books, both amazing. Adamant Entertainment, XRP, AEG. I mean, it's a huge list.
We can go on, but that'd be a show itself, so.
So you've clearly been keeping yourself busy over the years.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
Go on.
Sorry, go on.
No, you go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just agreeing, basically.
Oh.
I had nothing witty to add.
Now, you're currently writing for Wizards of the Coast for Dungeons & Dragons 4th edition.
Yeah.
And you have a pretty massive portfolio of stuff going back over the years for Wizards, and seeing as that's your current major gig, let's start with that. Now, your first assignment with Wizards of the Coast was the Heroes of Horror book, a really groundbreaking book for 3rd edition. So how did you land that? Was that due to your previous work for White Wolf, that you were known as a horror writer, or some other way?
No, that's pretty much exactly how it happened. I'd been well, let's call a spade. I'd been pestering the people at WotC to work with them for a while, and when that book came around, they decided that my experience with the White Wolf's games made me a good candidate for it, and they contacted me.
Okay, right. So a little bit of pestering at the door actually paid off in that regard.
It usually does in this industry. To be perfectly honest with you, if you're quiet and sit back, nobody ever gives you anything. You have to bug them. I may take that a little bit too far, but.
And having a quality portfolio to back it up, I suppose, doesn't hurt either.
It doesn't seem to have.
No. And I also noticed you've got a regular column now at EN World.
Yes.
That makes interesting reading too.
Oh, so do you have any pull for the Anywhere? No, I'm just kidding.
Vince, behave.
What? You know, we're in the contest.
See, the problem with that question is you asked me on record. Ask me again later.
I can always edit that
We'll just
out.
cut it out of the show, yeah.
Yeah, I edit the show. I can do what I want.
Now, another really notable third edition era book was Cityscape.
Yes.
This is a book that can be of real use in a World of Darkness game as well, because it contains much generic advice in addition to good, hard third edition crunch. Now, what were your main concerns when writing this? I mean, after writing Gilded Cage for Vampire, did you feel that you were able to bring experience from that book to the table for Cityscape?
Maybe a little bit. I don't know that there was a whole lot of crossover, just because Gilded Cage tended to be a little bit more focused on specific aspects of what to do with the city. Cityscape was a much more general overview of the topic, because it was written for a game that hadn't really touched on that as of yet. Our main goal with that book was, well, as I just said, basically almost more along the lines of overview advice. There's some crunch in there, obviously, but a lot of DMs, especially newer DMs, just don't know how to go about even designing an urban campaign. And we wanted that book to be kind of the gateway into the topic for them. It actually, to be honest, in my experience, it actually kind of met with mixed reviews because of that. There were some people who, if you're already experienced that kind of thing, they didn't think there was a lot of new information in there, and maybe that's true, but we wanted it to be really useful to people who were accustomed to the typical dungeon crawler wilderness-based campaign, and for them, I think, it did indeed prove pretty useful.
Well, I like the sort of the toolbox nature of it, the fact that although, I've got years of DMing experience, it was good to have it all nicely compiled between two covers that you could flip it open and, pull whatever you needed right out of the pages. It was really good.
Absolutely.
Have you seen Damnation City for World of Darkness?
I haven't. I haven't had the opportunity to keep up in the last, in the recent past.
That does a similar sort of thing for...
I mean, I'd very much love to see it. I just, at the moment, most of my role-playing expenditures are going towards the games I'm currently working on. I have to keep up with those more, obviously.
Well, yeah.
Now, I just wanted to touch on the Tome of Artifacts for a moment. I'm a huge Necromancer Games fan, and I really loved that book. It was an almost overwhelming amount of ideas. It's one of the few books that I'll pick it up and open it and just think, oh my god, it's too much, really huge. So how did that project come into being? What was it like corralling such a huge amount of imaginative talent?
That one, I actually approached Clark Peterson with that one. I had been talking to the Necromancer folks, and I'd done a little bit of work for them, but not much. In fact, I think... I'm not even remembering now. I think Doom of Listenshire came before that, but
yeah, it did. Yeah.
Either way, that's all I've done with them so far. But I was a very big fan of their Tome of Horrors book, and I liked the idea of a book of artifacts. If I'd really had everything I wanted, some of them would have been conversions of classic D&D artifacts, just like Tome of Horrors was of classic monsters, but we didn't have the rights to those.
Right.
But we still very much loved the idea. As far as getting all the writers together, it was basically just a question of shooting out an enormous number of email invitations and seeing who was interested. I mean, nothing in that book was assigned from my end. Everything was, if you're interested, pitch me your artifact ideas, and I will pick the ones that I think fit the book. So it was very much a collaborative effort, except for finally putting it all together into a single document. That was all me, and my eyes still occasionally bleed just from thinking about that.
Didn't you call for some pictures on the Necromancer forums, actually, now I'm thinking about it? I do recall seeing a thread about that, I think.
God, I'm trying to remember now.
I think I remember seeing something
It wasn't a completely open call.
Yeah.
Just because I've done open calls in the past. I handled that for one of the Scarred Lands books, and you can get some good stuff out of that, but it's a Herculean task unto itself. And with the Artifacts book, I really wanted to keep with people who had at least some writing experience. There's a couple of newcomers in there, but those were people who I already knew from past experience had some good ideas and some talent.
Cool. Now about 4th edition D&D. We don't do edition wars and darker days.
No.
Neither between the old world or no old world N-ward clashes. No 3rd edition, 4th edition clashes. No. But that said, though, did you find it difficult or very different switching over from writing for 3rd edition to writing for 4th edition? Are they completely different beasts to design for, or is there a fair amount of overlap there?
The reason
they're very different mechanically. Obviously, when you get down to the core ideas, the concepts are the same. But as far as actual mechanical development, it was almost reversed itself in a way. Back in the 3rd edition days, even though I enjoyed creating DM material, monsters for instance, that was always a lot more complex, a lot more difficult mechanically than designing player material, new spells, even new classes. And in 4th edition, I find it's pretty much reversed. I find it very easy and enjoyable to create monsters, but with the power structure, creating new player material, I find to be a lot more complicated.
Right.
It's easier on a purely mechanical sense because the effects are a little bit more formalized, but by the same token, that can actually make it more difficult to come up with a power that doesn't feel like it's been done before.
Right.
So, it's not really much of an answer to say same but different. But parts of it are a lot easier, parts of it are a lot harder.
Okay, interesting.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the Tomb of Horrors. How did you keep that fresh for the new 4th edition? How did you rearrange it so people in 4th edition will be like, wow, this is awesome, it feels like the old game, or something like that?
Well, as I get into that, I do want to clarify something, which is, we never made a secret of this, but some people have still missed this. The new Tomb of Horrors is not a direct conversion of the original. It's closer in spirit to the 2nd edition Return of the Tomb of Horrors, in as much as it's largely new material tied into, based on, and inspired by the original. There is some of the original material in there, but actually only bits and pieces of it. This is essentially, you can look at it as the 3rd chapter, with the original tomb being the first one, Return to the Tomb of Horrors being the 2nd chapter, and this now being the 3rd. Although you don't need to have read the previous 2 to use it. As far as keeping it fresh, it was basically just a question of trying to come up with challenges, locations, puzzles that felt like the original. Obviously, they can't feel exactly like it because there's a very different design philosophy in 4th edition from 1st edition. We don't have the you made a bad decision, you die instantly. But by the same token, we did try to make the challenges deadlier than maybe previous 4th edition adventures have been. So it's very much kind of a fine line to walk. What we tried to focus on, everybody knows the original tomb was deadly, but what really made it original was its focus on problem solving and puzzles, clues, that kind of thing. And that's what we tried to focus on. Not every encounter in the new one is like that, but a huge number of them are. And that was the main thing, is we wanted an adventure that was going to make the players actually think, and try to solve individual clues, individual problems. And that, I think, is really what the core of the original one was. It wasn't the turn a corner and die so much as if you pay attention, you know why you shouldn't turn that corner.
Sure. Well, what impressed me about I ran it a short while ago, the 3rd edition conversion of it that was on the Wizards website, and as well as the original way back in the day. What always impressed me about it was the way that it's I suppose, a lot has to do with Gary Gygax's skill as a dungeon designer. The way it seemed to channel the characters through the dungeon, almost guessing beforehand the moves they're going to make and directing them into these interesting puzzles and challenges. I mean, did you experiment with that at all when you were designing the adventure? The way that that there's almost like a flow chart of moving through this dungeon, or did you take a more free-form, location-based approach to it?
There's some of each. I mean, there's at least in the portions that I designed. I wouldn't want to speak to for Scott's design philosophies on his sections, but in the sections I designed, it's certainly not it's not a single path. It's not there's only one choice for the players to make, but there are certain segments where they are subtly encouraged to go this way or that way. There are sections where they may find themselves having to go back to solve certain puzzles before they can move forward. It's in video game terms, there is a particular walkthrough path, but they don't have to do it in that precise order.
Cool. Now, one last thing before we move on from D&D, I also saw that you've been working on the Dark Sun Monster Manual.
Yes.
Now, I'm guessing you can't say too much about that.
No, unfortunately.
But how has that been? Has that been a lot of fun?
I would actually say that's been one of my most enjoyable 4th edition projects to date. I'm a big Dark Sun fan. I really had a chance to get creative with some of the creatures, designing some of the Sorcerer Kings, especially. We're trying to, or at least I was trying to sort of branch out a little bit, get a little bit further afield with the powers than we have been so far.
Cool.
No, I'm really looking forward to that book coming out. I really enjoyed working on that one.
Excellent. Well, I used to work for Athas.org a few years ago, and one of the biggest projects I did there was converting all the monsters from 2nd to 3rd edition for the Terrors of Athas book. So yeah, getting stuck into Dark Sun monsters is something I really empathize with. Is the Squark in it, I have to ask?
All I can say is that I did not work on one. I can't say actually in the book or not, but I'll say that
4th edition is dead to me. That's it. I'm finished.
There's always Pathfinder, Mark. Don't worry.
Yeah, about that not having edition wars.
Well, there's room for giant squid shark crossbeads in any edition, I say.
Oh, absolutely.
Yes.
Cool. Okay, well, let's go back then to where it all started out for you. Now, you say on your website you began gaming, like so many of us, with the red D&D box.
Yes.
But how did you first discover the World of Darkness?
That would have been, let's say, early college, and actually my wife, girlfriend at the time, introduced me to it. She had some experience with it from high school. And I had actually never heard of it. I had not really gotten into many games other than D&D. I mean, a little bit when I was a lot younger. Some Marvel superheroes, some Top Secret, some Star Trek, but nothing beyond that really. But she introduced me to World of Darkness, and she said from the beginning that she figured that Vampire would be my favorite. I, of course, had to be difficult, and the first book I bought was Werewolf, which I enjoyed, but I went to Vampire after that, and obviously that appealed to me a lot more, given my body of work. And yeah, that was, I want to say that was 94.
Okay,
but
so the second editions were out, and okay, right. So it was like middle of the metaplot explosion kind of thing. So been in at the deep end, I guess. Now, you got your break as a writer with White Wolf following a submission to Justin Achille. Was that for Gilded Cage, or?
No. What happened was, and again, I'm going to give you a long, meandering story here.
Good. That's what we're here for.
When we got married in '97, we went to New Orleans for our honeymoon.
Oh.
And when I was in New Orleans, I had an idea for a Voodoo-based vampire sect. And the idea was floated in my head for a couple of years. And then in '99 and 2000, I was working an office job as a proofreader at an ad agency. And I had a lot of free time while I was there. It's where I did some of my very early novel writing. And just because I needed a project to work on in my spare time, I wound up coming up with a short vampire supplement defining this voodoo-based sect I'd had in mind for 2 years. And I wound up actually writing a rough draft of the entire book.
Wow, yeah.
And then submitted that to Justin, which he couldn't use the book itself, but he liked the writing well enough, and obviously he saw that I could finish a project.
Yeah.
So it was based on that he offered me a few gigs, a couple of which didn't materialize, but which then went on to become Gilded Cage and the Thaumaturgy Companion, which was my second book, and which actually does include a few of the details that I had planned to include in that Voodoo book.
That's a great book.
And there's actually also a few of those ideas also made it all the way to Requiem in the New Orleans book.
Cool.
Oh wow, cool. Okay. Now your website also. Sorry, carry on.
I was just going to say, Justin did go on record a year later in public saying, by the way, I know it worked for Ari, but please don't send me entire books without checking first. So I don't know that I'd recommend anybody else try it the way I did it.
So you ruined it for everybody, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, pretty much.
Cool.
Send all your books now to Justin. No, I'm kidding.
Now, your website also mentions a Book of Shadows fan submission. Was that the Mage Book of Shadows?
No. What that was there was a, it doesn't exist anymore, there was a Ravenloft website called the Cargatane.
Yes.
And
right.
they did net books, and one of them was called the Book of Shadows.
Okay, cool.
And that was just a submission on my own little Ravenloft domain.
That was a great site. I'm sad to see that one disappear.
Yeah, I was too.
Okay.
So
now, sorry, Vince?
I was going to say, I was going to ask him about the Gehenna novel, the Final Night novel. What was it like writing that and writing for Vampire the Masquerade? And how'd you get into the mood for that? And what research did you do? And
that one was that was tricky. It wasn't the first novel I'd ever written, but it was my first published novel. So between that and the fact that it was basically ending the line, there was no pressure whatsoever, let me tell you. No, they gave me a certain guidelines on what had to happen and what characters wanted to be included, but it was otherwise actually a surprising amount of freedom on my part. Thankfully, I'd been keeping up with the meta plot to that point, so I had to go back and refamiliarize myself with some of it. But I had pretty much the basic knowledge of what I needed to do, and they were very good about filling me in on any details I needed to ask questions about.
Cool. Okay, so I mean, beyond initial guidelines, you had a fair amount of freedom there, then. So. Yeah,
I mean, they told me they wanted certain characters. They wanted to focus on Beckett.
Yeah.
But mostly it was just a question of what can you show us about Gehenna, about the end of the vampires, and there was a great deal of back and forth. There were a couple of different stages of outlining. There were some major rewrites. So it was very much a back and forth process. But I would say there wasn't a huge amount of advanced research because again, I'd been working on the line so much that I had a pretty good grasp of the meta plot at that point. Of course, I've all forgotten it by now, but
yeah.
That's.
Were you pleased with how it turned out then, the novel?
I was. I mean,
As
obviously.
first novels go?
Yeah, I mean, having written it a while back, obviously I wouldn't do it the exact same way now. But all things being equal, I was pretty happy with it, yes.
Cool. Good one. Now, out of the World of Darkness products that you worked on, which did you enjoy the most? Or which one were you proudest of? Either or both?
I don't know if it's the one I enjoyed writing the most, but I think the one I'm proudest of is probably actually Victorian Age Vampire. I know it's not one of the most popular ones out there, but
well,
I was really happy with the way that one came out in the writing. Just the feel of the sections I wrote, the combination of the accuracy and gain potential of the information. That was one of those stars aligned kind of projects.
I've noticed a big spark with that game as of late. For some reason, people have been picking it up and playing it, so it might be gaining some popularity in some circles. So
there's a lot of good buzz about it. Every time it gets mentioned, people rave about it. Definitely.
Yeah, no, I'm quite happy. As far as the one that I enjoyed writing most, I might have to go back all the way to Archons and Templars, just because I wrote so much of that book in voice, in character, and the particular characters in question, I had a lot of fun channeling, if you will.
No,
so I think that was the one that I had the most actual fun writing, even though it isn't the best one quality-wise.
Well, okay. Since you're working mostly on D&D right now and focusing mostly on 4th edition, do you still play any World of Darkness games? Do you have time, or?
I actually haven't played World of Darkness in quite some time. I would be happy to. I just for a time I was kind of burned out on it.
Yeah.
This was back right after writing working on the Vampire the Requiem core book. There were some experiences on that book. Nobody's fault in particular. I'm not pointing fingers.
Right.
But we were trying to work on that at the same time the New World of Darkness core book was being worked on, so we didn't have all the rules. We had to go back and do a lot of rewriting there. And also, White Wolf hadn't yet decided exactly what the game was going to look like.
Tricky.
So there was a lot of rewriting there. There was a lot of frustration, and it just it kind of burned me out on World of Darkness for a while. At this point, I'd be happy to go back and play it again, but nobody in my various groups is running it, and I don't have the brain power to run a game right now for the work that I'm doing.
Well, you're really focused on D&D right now, and that's your bread and butter right now. So you gotta stick with what you're doing.
Absolutely.
Well, speaking of World of Darkness, the new line, now that it's pretty much all completely out, all the core rules and everything, what do you think of the entire line, and which one out of them do you look at and go, oh, this one I'd really like to play if I really had the time?
I would really actually like to give the new Changeling a shot. I was never that taken with the original Changeling game, but I very much like what I've read of the new one. I think it's got a lot more story potential, a lot more mythic resonance to it. I'm happy with the line overall.
Right.
I actually, looking at what they've done with Changeling and Geist and whatnot, it does make me wish that we'd been allowed to change Vampire more than we had.
Yeah.
I would actually have liked Requiem to be more different from Masquerade than it wound up being. But, hindsight, and also it wasn't my call to make.
Yeah, yeah.
So no, I'm overall happy with the entire line, though.
Well, we've had a couple of guests have echoed that sentiment, actually, about how Requiem, when it started out, was very much, I don't want to say in Masquerade's shadow, but it was very much channeling some of the same ideas. And it's not until much, much further down the line, supplements that came out a few years later, that they really started to mix things up and try new takes on vampirism and new
Sure,
approaches to the setting.
And I think that's, as much as I might wish otherwise, I think it wouldn't have been fair to expect otherwise. This was the first time that White Wolf was doing anything of this sort. I mean, this kind of major shift. And, they were sort of making it up as they went along, and I think there was some understandable hesitation. I mean, it had been working for them for so long. It would have been nice to change more from the beginning, but I can understand why they were reluctant.
There's a book coming out called World of Darkness Mirrors that is supposed to be filled with all sorts of crazy, wild, alternate takes on the World of Darkness. That's due out in... Actually, I don't know when it's due out. Soon.
I thought it was due at the end of the summer, maybe.
That'd be something.
I actually hadn't heard about that one, but I'll need to look into it.
Yes.
There's rules for using World of Darkness as a fantasy game or a science fiction game, and different methods of creating characters, and the whole fold, spindle, mutilate thing. And
that sounds cool.
That sounds like a lot of fun. Yeah. But the guys at White Wolf are being super tight-lipped about it, as you might expect. So we have to wait and see.
Yeah, rough them up.
Yeah. Now, moving on from World of Darkness, and in fact from Wizards of the Coast a bit too, you're starting to enjoy quite a bit of success with novel writing. You mentioned Gehenna was the first one that you had published. I also see that you signed a 2-book deal with Random House.
Yes.
And
that was
go ahead. Sorry, carry on. Oh, I was just going to say your novel Conqueror's Shadow is out now from. Is it Spectra who's published that, or is that Wizards who published that?
No, that was Spectra, which is a Random House division. That's the first book of the 2-book contract.
Okay, right, okay.
And it's got it's a standalone. It's not going to leave people hanging. Mm-hmm. But the second book is a sequel, which I'm hoping people want to pick up. And that's coming out next year.
Cool. And is the second one written, or are you still working on that?
The second one is pretty much done. I mean, there's still some copy editing passes to be made, but that's about it. Yeah.
So how did that publishing deal come about then? Was that off the back of your previous novel writing, or did you have to go through the whole, pitch and agent routine?
Once again, I sort of took the back way in here. Same way with the with the RPG stuff. What happened was, I was doing some novel writing for Wizards of the Coast. I did a novel for the Magic line.
Right.
And they were going to publish a line of books called Wizards of the Coast Discoveries. And this was a line of books that was not related to any other gaming material. Mm. And I was originally I had pitched the book, it was not called Conqueror's Shadow at the time, it was that book. I had pitched that to them, and they were going to publish it. And then the Discoveries line was canceled. But while that book was in the Wizards of the Coast catalog, I got an email from an agent who had seen it and liked the description and wanted to talk to me about representing me for future projects. So I ended up signing with him because the book was coming out from Wizards of the Coast, and then Wizards of the Coast canceled it, and he then turned around and sold it to Random House.
Excellent.
Which, without meaning any disrespect to Wizards of the Coast, actually turned it as a better deal for me. Random House being just a little bigger publisher.
Yeah, that's a good stroke of luck. So now, I haven't read it yet, actually, but from what I've understood from what you've said on EN World in the blurb that I've read, it's about a warlord whose life has kind of turned around somewhat, correct? And he's now in the position of being able to save the nation from danger. Do I understand the plot premise correctly there? Essentially,
what happened is. This is somebody who, 17 years before the bulk of the book, was working on his own conquest for reasons that are discussed in the book, and abandoned it at the last minute for, again, reasons that nobody knows. Nobody really understands why he did it. And then 17 years later, when all he wants to do is just live peacefully with his family, he's actually married to somebody who was a hostage back during his conquering days.
Okay.
Obviously, that relationship has changed as well.
Yes.
But what happens is somebody else shows up, essentially following his plans and with knowledge of his original schemes that nobody else should have. And a combination of that and the fact that his own family is now in danger is what inspires him to essentially come out of retirement and try to deal with this new guy. Effectively, it's I tell people that he's not exactly a redeemed character. He hasn't turned good so much as he's just changed his priorities.
Yeah.
He's more interested in his family than in conquest, but he's still very much a dark character. I basically tell people that he's the good guy because the villain is even worse.
Excellent.
But it's there are some parts of the book that are very funny, and I tried to make the characters very sympathetic, but at the same time, there are other places where it does get very dark, and he's not he's not a hero in really in any respect.
The classic sense, right.
Yeah.
Are there elements in the book that you think might make it of interest to World of Darkness gamers or White Wolf fans?
Well, certainly it's dark enough. The shades of gray type characters, the amoral characters, but with real moral choices to make. I think all of that is really very reminiscent in some ways of many of the World of Darkness games.
Cool.
And of course, there's the portrayal of various supernatural evils that you almost have to be interested in to be a World of Darkness player.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, obviously it's an epic fantasy. It's not set in the modern era or anything, but I think some World of Darkness fans would very much like it.
Well, certainly with the new World of Darkness, with the kinds of supernatural creatures that can crop up in the games, with the categories thrown wide open, it doesn't have to be a werewolf, a ghost, or a mage. I think that certainly leaves the door open for importing fantastical creations from all sorts of sources.
Exactly.
So yeah, that sounds really interesting. So what are you reading at the moment? Anything particularly cool that you want to recommend to our listeners, or?
I actually haven't read a lot of new releases recently. I've been kind of on a classic kick lately. I recently, I've been reading some of the classics, some of the older short stories. Howard, Solomon Kane, for instance, I've been reading recently.
Nice.
And actually, just as kind of a lark, I've been reading some of the old Doctor Who novels.
Oh, cool! I saw your post on Ian World actually about the meddling monk.
Yeah, no, I'm a big fan of the current version of the show, but I'm only slowly catching up on the older stuff.
Oh, fantastic!
But the only thing new that I've read recently, I actually hasn't even been published yet, so I don't know if
okay.
Well, I will say that I'll say this: anybody of your listeners who is a fan of maybe some of the more fun, action-packed, lighthearted urban fantasy, should probably keep an eye out for a fellow named Kevin Hearn.
Kevin.
Okay.
I've just read and provided a cover blurb for his first book, which is coming out, I think, later this year or next year.
Cool, Kevin Hearn. Okay, insider tip there from the Rodent of the Dark.
Yes.
Cool.
So let's dip into our traditional Beckett bucket. We haven't heard that in a while, Mark, right?
No, we haven't.
What is your process for getting in the writing mood? Listen to music? Do you dance around the room with a hat on your head? Or what type of things do you do?
My usual process is to get up, spend some time at the computer, not writing, just, message boards and checking various news sites and whatnot.
Okay.
And then I usually put on writing music, which for me is usually movie soundtracks.
Oh.
Richard Dansky said something similar about that when we interviewed him on the last episode, and he said movie soundtracks too.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. Almost entirely orchestral, and usually not anything with lyrics.
Yeah.
And at that point, it's less that I'm in the writing mood so much as at that point I'm able to make myself start writing. But I have to get started and get into it before I actually get into the writing mood.
Okay.
So even though I get into the habit of doing it, I write every day pretty much, or almost every day. It still requires some effort to get into the mindset.
Cool.
Okay.
I have a couple questions here. Looking at my paper here that I wrote down while speaking because it just jarred my memory. Did you have any input or did you write anything to do with the Star Wars line for the Saga edition when it was out?
I did not.
Okay.
I'm a big Star Wars fan, but I haven't kept up with. I kept up with some of the expanded universe, not all of it.
Mm-hmm.
There were portions of the game I would have liked to have worked on, but it just never happened.
Okay. So, working with Wizards of the Coast, you work closely with Rodney Thompson often?
I've worked with him several times. I don't know if... I wouldn't say often, just because he was on the Star Wars line for so long.
Mm-hmm.
He was focusing there. But I've worked with him on several projects, yes.
Because I know he's working heavily on 4th edition projects right now. I was wondering maybe you were working with him on something. That you can mention.
Not directly with him in the recent past. We did communicate somewhat on the Dark Sun monster book.
Right.
On the Squawk, right?
Mark.
Okay. So what are you working on at the moment then?
I have two things going on right now. One of which I can just say it's a Project Wizards of the Coast. I can't say what it is.
Yeah.
The other thing is I've just recently completed the first draft of a new novel that my agent has since passed along to some editors, and we'll see if that goes anywhere.
Oh.
Right.
But this is...
Anything you can tell us about it, or no?
I will say that this is actually my first urban fantasy novel.
Oh.
It's not epic, not tied to anything I've done before. It's not entirely like most other urban fantasy novels in as much as it's not quite the modern world. It's a period piece.
Right.
It's actually, and I'm trying to decide how much I can go ahead and talk about here. I will say that it's an urban fantasy set during the gangland days in Chicago at the end of Prohibition.
Fun. Wow.
I'm not going to go into any more detail than that, but I'm certainly hoping the editors like it. I think it's potentially. I don't want to count my chickens. There's potentially a series in it.
It's an interesting setting as well.
And we'll see if that goes anywhere.
So did you have to research for that, or?
Oh, quite a bit.
Yeah.
I read several books on the history of Chicago at the time. I've read several books on the folklore and legends behind the various creatures I'm involving.
Cool.
I actually was... I picked up a book that is essentially written in the style of a tour guide for Chicago from 1929.
Oh, great. Cool.
But it was definitely one of my research... My heaviest research projects. I was actually complaining online that given how poor a student I was back when I was in school, it's astonishing that I am deliberately choosing projects that have homework.
Excellent. Cool. Well, final couple of questions from me. What book by another author do you wish you'd written? Is there anything that you look at and read and just go, oh, damn, I wish I'd done that?
There's been a few. a couple of Stephen Bruce's Vlad Tolstoy novels made me feel that way.
Yeah.
I really liked those. There was another one recently where I had that reaction, and of course now I'm completely blanking on it. And I even thought about this when you sent the email questions, and I can't. I'm just.
You can drop by our forums and tell us when you remember.
There you go.
Yeah.
But definitely Stephen Bruce's materials, and I've occasionally had that experience with particular scenes or exchanges in TV shows. There have been some of those scenes in Babylon 5 where I've said I wish I could have written that character, that scene, that character arc.
Yeah.
But as far as the novels, the only ones that are coming to mind right now are the Bruce.
Bruce, yeah. Cool. And so finally, what's next for you? You've got your the sort of the pseudo gangland novel, your Wizards of the Coast secret project.
Yes.
What do you have next on the horizon?
I'm not entirely sure. That's going to depend, at least partly, on whether this on how this novel does, when it's picked up. I would very much like to do, like I said, a few more books in that series, and I'm happy to dive into those next if that's appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
If not, I have a file of several pages of other novel ideas that I'd be happy to get into. I would not mind at all doing more tie-in novel fiction as well for certain projects, certain properties. It's really a question of what's available.
Right.
I'm not making any concrete plans until I see where things stand.
There you go. Nice and flexible. I'm sure Vince has got a couple of questions. I know he's got at least one for you that's not on the list ever.
Never. But before I get to that, let's talk sci-fi for a second here.
Okay.
Have you had a chance to check out Sci-Fi's new Stargate show, Stargate Universe?
I haven't. I enjoyed the other two, but I just haven't gotten around to watching any of this one.
Oh. Well, if you like the other two, you definitely will enjoy this one. I suggest you check it out whenever you have a moment.
All right.
And the question that Mark is referring to, what I usually ask of all of our guests, and random question A, if you could be a household appliance, which one would you be and why?
Oh, boy.
That's never on the list, because we always like to get it on spur of the moment.
Household appliance. Well, I think I am going to go with the television.
Okay.
Just because it's pretty much always the center of attention.
And always entertaining.
There you go.
Boom. Cool. So, all right. So, how can our fans follow you, get in contact with you, stalk you, whatever?
Well, I tend to post most of my updates either to the news or blog sections on my website.
Okay.
Which is Mouseferatu.com, or you can also just do remarmell.com.
Okay.
And I'm also on Twitter as Mouseferatu.
Okay.
And yeah, I think Twitter and my site should do it. I'm also on Facebook and LiveJournal, but those two are the easiest ways to find me.
Cool. And we've got your phone number now, so we'll just put that on the forums too.
Yeah.
You could do that.
Yeah, we can publicize that as well on N-World, and people can yell at you directly.
Yeah, I would probably have to mail you an angry badger.
There'd be injunctions and everything. We don't want to go there.
Yes.
And Mark, how can people get in contact with us here at Darker Days Radio?
They can email us, Vince, at darkerdaysradio@gmail.com.
No pauses this week, Mark?
No, I'm just being slick. They can also go by the forums at wildgamesproductions.com and drop us a line there. Follow us with Twitter, AlucardD20, or go to the Facebook page. And if you just go to Facebook and type in Darker Days Radio, you'll find us right there.
Yes, or facebook.com/Darker Days Radio.
That works too.
And that's going to cue the out music, and we're going to say goodnight. Ari, thanks for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you very much.
And we hope to hear from you in the future, and good night.
All right, thanks.